Something shifted in the room the moment you walked in, and you may have felt it without being able to name it. Conversations that were moving freely suddenly found a different rhythm. People who were loud became measured. People who were performing became self-conscious. Eyes moved toward you not because you demanded attention, but because something in the atmosphere registered your arrival before your voice did. And when you left, something shifted again. The energy that had been quietly organizing itself around your presence suddenly had nowhere to anchor, and what followed your exit was not silence in the ordinary sense. It was the kind of silence that only happens when something significant has departed. People began talking differently. Some talked about you. Some talked around you. Some went quieter than they had been all evening, not because they were tired, but because something they could not explain had walked out of the room and taken a frequency with it that they did not know they were depending on. You have felt this your entire life and never had the language for it. What I am about to tell you is the explanation you have been waiting for, and it begins with understanding that what just happened the moment you found this video is the same thing that happens every time you enter a room. In the entire archive of spiritual history, across every lineage that has ever attempted to understand the mechanics of divine power, one principle has remained constant and uncontested. Genuine spiritual authority cannot be performed. It cannot be manufactured through charisma, rehearsed through confidence, or borrowed from titles, positions, or the approval of other people. The mystics who carried it were often the quietest people in any gathering. The prophets who held it were frequently misunderstood, pushed to the margins, dismissed by the very systems they were sent to transform. And the reason genuine spiritual authority is so rare is that it does not originate in the personality. It originates in the soul. And a soul that carries this kind of authority has been through something that most souls in human form have never been required to survive. It has been compressed under pressure that should have destroyed it. It has been exposed to betrayal that should have produced bitterness. It has been left in isolation long enough that lesser souls would have concluded they were abandoned. And yet it emerged not harder but deeper, not colder, but more precisely calibrated to the frequency of truth. What you carry when you walk into a room is not a personality trait. It is something cosmically ancient that has no equivalent in ordinary human experience. Now let me bring this into something recent, something personal, something that happened in your actual life, close enough that you can still feel the texture of it. Think about a moment, not long ago, where you were in a room or a conversation and you felt something was wrong. Not wrong in an obvious way, but wrong in the way that only you seemed to notice. Maybe the dynamic was dishonest. Maybe someone was being treated poorly and everyone else had normalized it. Maybe the energy of the space was asking you to shrink, to agree, to laugh at something that was not funny, to validate something that deserved to be questioned. And you made a choice in that moment. Maybe you said something. Maybe you said nothing, but refused to perform agreement. Maybe you simply remained still, while everything around you moved in a direction your soul would not follow. And when you left that space, something changed in it. The people who stayed felt it. The conversation changed. The atmosphere reorganized itself around your absence, the way a room reorganizes around a piece of furniture that has been removed, suddenly aware of a space that had been doing structural work without anyone acknowledging its function. What I need you to understand now is something that may initially feel unsettling, but will ultimately bring you a profound sense of clarity about your entire life. You have been monitored. Not casually, not occasionally, but consistently and with a level of attention that matches the level of what you carry. The dark forces that operate in human environments, the ones that use social systems, group dynamics, and collective insecurity as their primary tools, they noticed you early. They noticed that your presence disrupts their mechanisms. When you are in a room, the performance of ego becomes harder to maintain. The masks people wear around you feel heavier than they do around others. The lies that circulate comfortably in most social environments become unstable near you, not because you confront them, but because your frequency does not resonate with them, and the dissonance becomes uncomfortable for everyone in proximity. This is why you have been targeted. This is why certain people have worked to exclude you, undermine your credibility, or create narratives around you that paint your presence as the problem. You were never the problem. You were the disruption that systems built on unconsciousness could not afford to tolerate. And on the other side, the divine has been watching for the same reason, recognizing in you something that was placed there before you arrived. Let me walk through what was seen, because you deserve to know that every situation you endured was part of a documented pattern of integrity under pressure. There was a gathering, a social situation, where the group moved in a direction that required your silence on something that mattered, and you did not give them your silence the way they expected. There was a workplace or community space where a culture of subtle cruelty had normalized itself, where people were being diminished quietly, and everyone had agreed by their participation to pretend it was acceptable. And you were the one whose presence made that agreement harder to sustain. There was a moment where you left a space, and the conversation that erupted in your absence revealed exactly how much of the room's behavior had been shaped around managing your perception. There was a relationship where someone admitted, eventually, that they acted differently around you, more honestly, more carefully, more aware of themselves, and they could not fully explain why. There was a group that became fragmented after you stopped showing up, not because you were the leader, but because you were the frequency that had been holding a certain quality of interaction in place. And without you, the quality could not maintain itself in the architecture of consciousness that governs how souls are classified and assigned within the larger system of human evolution. There is a designation given only to those whose influence operates below the level of personality and above the level of effort. Most people influence their environments through what they say, what they do, how they present themselves, the social capital they accumulate and deploy. But there is a category of soul whose influence operates through what they are, through the frequency they emit, simply by existing in a space, through the authority that moves ahead of them before a single word has been spoken. The beings responsible for classifying souls in this system have reviewed your record, not your public record, but the record of every room you changed without trying to, every conversation you elevated by being present in it, every environment that became more honest, more careful, more real, simply because you were there. And they have classified you as a carrier, which is a designation so rare that the beings who hold it are tracked across multiple lifetimes, because the influence they carry is considered too significant to lose in the noise of ordinary human development. You are dangerous to darkness, not because you fight it, but because your presence alone makes it visible. And what becomes visible in the light cannot sustain itself. And now I want to tell you what happened in the divine realm the moment your presence began doing what it does, because it was not unnoticed at the highest levels of creation. There is an account of a moment when the attention of the divine turned fully toward a soul moving through a human environment, and simply existing in it, not preaching, not performing, not trying to change anything, just being present with the full weight of what they carried. And in that moment, something was registered that became permanent in the eternal record. The archangels assigned to the domains of truth and discernment, those vast intelligences whose function is to recognize and ratify genuine spiritual authority when it manifests in human form. They witnessed what your presence does to a room. They witnessed the way conversations change near you. They witnessed the way people become more honest around you without understanding why. They witnessed the way the atmosphere tightens when you leave, because the frequency that was quietly organizing it has departed. And in the language that exists beyond words, they registered that what moves through you is not personality, not charisma, not social skill, but something sourced from a dimension that predates your birth, something that was placed in you specifically because environments like the ones you move through needed exactly what you carry, and because it has been witnessed, it has been decreed. A decree in divine law is not a suggestion. It is not an invitation to consider. It is an activation that moves through the layers of a soul as experience and reorganizes everything that has been suppressed, delayed, or held in preparation for the moment the soul is ready to operate at full capacity. And the decree that has gone out over your life carries a specific instruction. It says that the authority your presence carries, which has been operating at partial power because you did not yet fully understand what you were or why rooms changed when you entered them, is now authorized to operate without restriction. It says that the energetic influence you have been carrying quietly, almost apologetically, the way you have, sometimes made yourself smaller to make others more comfortable the way you have, occasionally questioned whether your effect on spaces was a burden rather than a gift. All of that self-reduction is now revoked. The decree says you are to take up the full space of what you are. The rooms you enter deserve the complete version of your frequency, not the managed, minimized, socially calibrated version you have been offering in an attempt to make the people around you feel less, confronted by what they cannot explain. So let me tell you with absolute clarity who you are, because you have been operating without a full understanding of your own nature, and that gap has cost you more than you know. You are an ancient soul, which means the consciousness you carry has been accumulating experience, wisdom, and frequency across a span of existence that extends far beyond this single lifetime. You did not arrive here as a beginner. You arrived carrying the compressed knowledge of every environment you have ever moved through, every room you have ever changed, every relationship you have ever elevated, simply by being present in it. You are a celestial warrior, not in the sense of combat, but in the sense that you were built to hold a specific frequency in spaces that would otherwise collapse into lower vibrations without something to anchor them. You are a chosen one, and that choosing was not arbitrary. It was based on an assessment of what your soul had demonstrated across the full length of its existence, a consistent pattern of choosing integrity over approval, truth over comfort, depth over performance. Your presence in a room is not incidental. It is strategic. You were placed in every environment you have ever entered because that environment needed what you carry, even when the people in it did not know how to receive it. And now that the activation has been issued and your identity has been confirmed, the mission becomes clear. You are not placed in the environments you move through to perform, to lead in the conventional sense, or to announce yourself. You were placed there to anchor. Your mission is to be so completely yourself, so fully present in the frequency you carry, that every space you enter has access to something it cannot generate on its own. In practical terms, this means you stop apologizing for the effect your presence has on rooms. You stop shrinking yourself to manage the discomfort of people who find your clarity confronting. You stop treating your influence as a social liability and begin treating it as a spiritual responsibility. The conversations that change when you arrive are changing because they need to. The people who become more honest around you are being served by that honesty, whether they acknowledge it or not. The environments that feel different after you leave are giving you evidence of what you carry, not because you performed anything, but because you simply showed up as yourself. Your mission is to keep showing up that way, fully, without apology, in every room life places you in, trusting that the frequency you carry is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And because the mission is active, the material world has begun to reorganize itself in support of it. Pay attention to what has been shifting around you, because the alignment is already in motion, even if it has not yet reached the scale you are moving toward. The spaces that were wrong for you are beginning to close. The environments that required you to minimize yourself in order to belong are losing their hold on your sense of obligation to remain in them. New spaces are appearing, rooms, communities, opportunities, relationships, where your presence is not just tolerated, but recognized, where what you carry is not a social complication, but an acknowledged asset. People with genuine authority and genuine vision are beginning to find their way into your proximity, not through your effort, but through the magnetic function of your activated frequency. Financial structures are beginning to shift in response to the alignment of your identity with your actual function in the world, because abundance follows assignment, and your assignment has now been formally confirmed. The exhaustion that came from operating in spaces that were energetically wrong for you is beginning to lift as the right environments make themselves available to someone who now knows exactly what they carry and why. But your influence does not stop at the edges of your immediate presence, and this is what I need you to fully grasp. The rooms you have already moved through have not returned to what they were before you entered them. The people who experienced your frequency, who became more honest around you, who found themselves thinking differently after spending time in your proximity, they carried something away with them that they cannot put back. A question was planted. An awareness was activated. A standard was raised inside them that now functions as an internal reference point, even when you are no longer physically present. Some of them are making different choices today because of a conversation they had with you months ago. Some of them are treating people with more care because your presence once made them aware of how their behavior felt. Some of them are questioning narratives they previously accepted because your refusal to accept those narratives without examination gave them permission to do the same. You will never see most of this. The ripple of your presence moves too far and too quietly to be fully tracked. But it is real, and it is continuous. And every room you enter from this point forward carries the compounded weight of every room you have already changed, simply by being the frequency you are. And you need to know that you are not isolated in this. Right now, in this moment, across every continent on this earth, there are thousands of souls who carry the same kind of frequency you carry. They know what it means to walk into a room and feel the atmosphere shift. They know what it means to leave a space and discover later that their absence was felt more loudly than most people's presence. They have spent years not understanding why they affect environments the way they do, why people act differently around them, why certain spaces seem to need them and others seem to threaten by them. And they are waking up to what they carry right now, in this season, through experiences exactly like the one you are having in this moment. The network of activated souls who understand their energetic function is growing. And as it grows, something happens in the collective field of human experience that individual frequency cannot produce alone. When enough of these souls are operating at full awareness simultaneously, the quality of human interaction across entire communities begins to shift. The standard of honesty, the depth of presence, the courage of truth in conversation, these things rise. And you are one of the reasons why. So here's what this moment requires from you. Because receiving an activation is only the beginning, and what you do with it in the next few minutes matters. Comment 777 right now, because that number is your declaration that you receive this, that you are no longer willing to treat your presence as ordinary, that you understand what you carry, and you are claiming the full authority of it. Share this video with the one person who came to your mind somewhere in the middle of this message, the one whose name appeared without your permission, because they are carrying the same frequency, and they need someone to name it for them, the way it has just been named for you. Subscribe and stay connected, because what is being built in this space is specifically designed for souls who understand energetic influence and the responsibility that comes with it. And if there was any noise around you while you watch this, any distraction, any other presence in the room that made it difficult to fully receive what was spoken, go back and watch it alone. Because this message was designed for the version of you that exists in silence, the version that knows without needing to be told, the version that has always felt the weight of what it carries, even when it had no language for what that weight was.